Well, hello there, I'm Brandon Nixon. Welcome back to my blog. I've had a lot of questions on the paints that I use because I do use oil paints, but they're not traditional oil paints. They're water mixable oil paints. Well, what does that mean, you might ask? Well, glad you did. Water mixable oil paints are simply, I don't need turpentines or all the hazardous chemicals that you typically do with normal traditional oils because they simply clean up with water, which really helps bridge the gap between acrylics. A lot of people like using acrylics because of the ease of cleanup. Acrylics have, some other aspects to them that I personally didn't like too much, as they dry really quick. They also dry a lot darker typically than when they're wet, so it makes you to where you have to really adjust your values when they're wet to compensate for that change in value. So when these came out, I really liked it, or I really wanted to try it, and after using several brands and whatnot, I've really enjoyed the Holbein Duo Aqua paints. I'm not a chemist or anything, but from what I've read on them about these paints is unlike some of the other brands, I think there's several other that have Winsor Newton, and I'm trying to think there's another one that has some water soluble paints out as well. But with Holbein, what they actually did is they took their traditional oil paints, and actually the paint itself is the same paint as if you got just regular non-water soluble oil paints. But apparently they added some type of binder to the linseed oil in the paint, which makes it, I guess, break down in water. So these handle almost identical to a traditional oil paint. Now, if you've been painting with oils and use different brands, there's different consistencies and whatnot from one paint to another. Before, I'd used a lot of Rembrandt, which is a real creamy consistency right out of the tube. I have found that these aren't quite as creamy right out of the tube. They tended to be a little bit thicker than that. But what I have found is, after messing with them a little bit, is I also use their linseed oil. It's the Duo Aqua water soluble linseed oil, and a few drops of that mixed into it, and you're back to the same consistency that I was used to with the Rembrandt paints. So it's really neat that you can work with these that way. And they've actually gotten smart. When they first came out, they had the colors, they named red and marine blue and things of that nature, more like what you would see a house paint kind of named after. But they've gotten smart here recently, and they've changed their names to more traditional oil paint names, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, ultramarine deep, things of that nature. So that's helped as well. So it's really bridging that gap between the two, and so that's been useful in being able to use these paints. The other media that I use is actually by Winsor Newton, and it's their Artesian brand, which is their water soluble oil paints. They have a fast drying medium here that, if you've used traditional oils, it's like a liquine. It will help speed up the drying time of the oil paint, so that basically overnight it'd be dry to the touch and you're ready to go. So, and it works basically the same as a liquine would, and it's about the same consistency as well. So that is helpful. Unlike traditional oil paint, I used to use my turp to use as a thinner for the paint to actually, do a wash or do a sketch in, something of that nature. I don't recommend that with the water soluble. When you use the water to actually thin the paint, they do get kind of tacky. There's some type of reaction going on there of breaking down that oil, and so I don't recommend that. I recommend using either the water soluble linseed oil, or the fast drying medium, or both, a combination of both, to make to thin out your paints for washes and for sketching in and things of that nature.